wọ́n ti máa fẹnu fapò sórí carburetor wait and get ní kò ní lọ kábọ̀ tí machine bá ti ń discover problem láàmú fix ẹ̀ lọ́wọ́ kan torí gbogbo original spare part ń bẹ ńlẹ̀ bíbá àwọn aláràlù àtàwọn aláràtúntà gan tó wá ń kó lọ́pọ̀ yanturu ṣe rí pé gbogbo ń tẹ́ fẹ́ lójú kan ló wà.
Yes, so our services, the consultancy, diagnosis, key programming, transmission repair, maintenance, spare part sales, plus plenty ogbonge things. GMF Auto Services Limited. Day for number 3, Oni Lane, beside White House Hotel, behind Boys High School, Labawo, Ogunpa, Ibadan.
Ẹ kọ́ pé wọ́n lórí aago náà kẹ́ ẹ mọ bó ṣe wà sí 08066348917 08066348917 tó o bá fẹ́ kẹ́mi ọkọ̀ rí ogun GMF ni ó yàn láàyò.
In the words of Robert Greene, mastery is not a function of genius or talent. It's a function of time and intense focus applied to a particular field of knowledge. Do you have what it takes to show mastery in chess, Ludo, Scrabble, Draft, and Ayolopon? Then this is for you. 32 FM and Midas Casino brings you Boardmasters 2023. Pick up your form for just 2,000 naira at 32 FM 4th floor, Cocoa House, Dubai, or visit the website www.32fm.com.ng/boardmasters to also register. Cash prizes will be won, including television sets, rechargeable fans, mini clippers, blenders, and lots more. This event holds on the 30th of September 2023 by 9 a.m. at Midas Casino, number 44, Awolowo Road, beside Sluggers, Bodija, Ibadan. For more information, call 091-321-00168 or 081-528-31139. Boardmasters 2023 is powered by Midas Casino and proudly brought to you by the Laughter Station, 32 FM 94.9. Boardmasters 2023, showcasing mastery.
FM 94.9.
Safa sapeli sizo simnyama Iwasafa isizo saba Kamula mo Anichaleni ko Kalize Wemaye wemodo Safa sapeli sizo simnyama.
On Wednesday night, Nigeria's Presidential Election Tribunal upheld Bola Tinubu's victory in the highly disputed presidential election of February the 25th, causing opposition supporters to despair about the state of the country. The election was a tightly contested affair between Tinubu, who is now president, and the leading opposition candidates, the People's Democratic Party's Atiku Abubakar and Labour Party's Peter Obi. In spite of the court's stance on the outcome of the election, Obi is not backing down on his claims that the election results were altered.
As petitioners in this case, we respect the views and ruling of the court, but we disagree with the court's reasoning and conclusions in the judgment it delivered. It is my intention as the presidential candidate and the intention of Labour Party to challenge this judgment by way of appeal immediately as allowed by the Constitution of Federal Republic of Nigeria. The PEPC has rendered its judgment, but that esteemed body is not the final arbiter. The responsibility now falls on the Supreme Court.
His posture is also not different from that of PDP's candidate Atiku, who is equally heading for the Supreme Court. The opposition parties in separate suits claimed Tinubu was not eligible to run for the presidency, citing alleged dual citizenship and drug conviction cases in the United States. Other arguments include overvoting, manipulation of results, forged certificates, and Tinubu's failure to garner 25% of votes in the capital city. All of them were thrown out by the court. With this latest development, it is clear the petition is yet to be laid to rest.
In their section 137(1) of their guidelines, INEC said the following procedures shall be followed as far as these elections are concerned. And the word shall connotes compulsion. In other words, you do it and you were being guided. INEC wasn't just given an unfettered power. They had to be guided by what the law says. Hence, whatever they were to do has to be in line with what the law says. And they were the ones that came out and said, this is how we're going to conduct it, by the use of beavers. And after the snapping of the Form EC8A. It's going to be transmitted real time, and Nigerians will have the privilege to compare what was snapped, because the law says there must be substantial compliance.
Alluded to the fact that the people who came to appeal refused to bring evidence, substantial evidence, to the court. The court will be able to compare. Merely criticizing INEC is like making INEC the whipping boy. For whatever reason, they didn't do it, but the law does not provide a punishment for not doing what they said they were going to do, insofar as the law did not make it mandatory.
All right, you're welcome back. You're still on to the podium on 32 FM 94.9. It's really great to have you there. And of course, joining us on the podium this morning. The program, of course, is coming to you from 32 FM 94.9. And we're live on our socials. Do remember that 32 FM 949 Ibadan on Facebook and also on YouTube for you to participate on the program this morning. We have our guests too standing by virtually, and our engagement this morning will start off with a review of the tribunal judgment, the presidential tribunal judgment. There've been a lot of dimension and so much talks around what this judgment should look like and what it should not look like. Many had said they were disappointed. I've seen a number of viral videos of some individuals, even outside Nigerians, who had gone to school to read law. And of course, looking at their lineage, they have fathers who are also lawyers, burning their wigs in disappointment. And in some quarters, it is celebrated judgment. It's something that everybody feels that, some people feel that it's a way to go. But for some others, it's a big slap for some others. But then you also heard from Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi in the course of the week, saying that they are disputing this tribunal judgment and they are going to the higher court to test the validity of this judgment, that they had screaming evidence against altered results during the elections itself. How true this is will be determined by the apex court, and that's the last court of the land that can look at this very development. Quickly, let me bring in our panelists. They are also seated and standing by virtually. I have Barrister Yomi Ogunlola in the studios this morning. Barrister, it's good to have you this morning. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Gbolabo, and good morning, Prof. And
good morning, my brother.
Yes,
good morning to you.
Good morning, our guest that is standing by. Please, Gbolabo, permit me to quickly make this correction.
Okay.
The issue of lawyers burning their wigs, I think that has been debunked.
Okay, that's
it was now found that it was actually a video clip from another jurisdiction entirely.
Yes, but what they're saying is that this person, I also watched the video to an extent. The person is saying that his father went to read law. He also went to law school, and this is his father's wig. This is his own wig. And now because he's disappointed with that, the person stays in the UK. And he kept it. There was a lock. There was a particular lock he keeps the wigs, and he was showing the audience that this is what I'm going to do.
Probably what he did was superimpose that video, which is not reality, because that video has been tested and found to be from another jurisdiction entirely. So it could have been one of the jokes that, these youths are capable of.
Well, we live in the world of deep fakes, like it's been called now. You can superimpose pictures, you can do certain things. But then people could actually go to any length when it comes to instances of protesting. And that's what some of the lawyers are also saying, the opposition lawyers, that when they have instances where justice is not being served, people could resort to self-help. But we know that Nigerians are law-abiding individuals, and they do not want to resort to self-help here, because we have a constitution that is binding on everyone to be lawful, to be orderly, no matter what the circumstances is. We must be determined. Our conduct must be determined by the provisions of these laws, and that's why we are people governed by rules and laws that we must respect, right from even the leadership. And that said, let me also bring in Professor Remi Ayede. Now we have two profs, if I have to use it. So, but Professor Remi Ayede is also part of the panelists. Prof, it's great to have you this morning.
Yeah, good morning. It's a pleasure to be on this panel today. Hi, Barrister.
Abio, my one and only, the prof of profs. How's Kenya?
It's very fine. It's
Wonderful.
a rainy morning.
All right, we also have our guests
okay.
also here. Prof, we have our guests also here. We have Professor Isaac Olawale Albert, who is a policy strategist. And of course, I'm going to give his proper introduction, but I just want you to also be part of this conversation around the outcome of the Presidential Tribunal judgment. I know it's a topical issue. Many Nigerians are still talking about it. It's great to have you on board, Professor.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Morning.
My barrister, I salute you.
Thank you, sir.
And Professor Ayede.
All right, Prof.
I'm your face, okay. And I thank the station for bringing Professor Ayede here this morning. He's a runaway colleague.
I'm trying to get what he's saying. All right, let me start off with barrister. Let me start off with Barrister. Quickly, Barrister, I guess you have a lot of things to say about this judgment, but I hope that it's not going to be radical here this one, because I know you want to speak truth to power.
Yes.
And how much more you do that, we must also be conscious that we are in a democratic system of government, and we want to do things in such a way that instances where we are living by example, and people are also picking the examples that we are serving to the public.
Exactly.
All right, let me give the floor to Barrister on this issue.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful once again to be here. I want to register my aversion to the judgment that was recently released, by the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. I have singled out 3 issues, which I feel rendered, in my opinion, that judgment unacceptable. I considered issues 3 and 4 in Obi's petition, and then the one relating to the guidelines and regulations on elections, which is another part of the issues addressed by the court. Now, on the rejection of 10 witnesses whose statements on oath did not accompany the petition, that was very, very sad. That those witnesses' oaths were already in court, that the list of documents already incorporated those statements on oath, that the pleadings already addressed the witnesses' statements on oath, but simply because it did not accompany the petition, on that technical ground, the court rejected it. I frown at that. And I will refer the House to Section 14 of the Evidence Act, which provides that evidence obtained, A, improperly or in contravention of the law, or B, in consequence of an impropriety or of a contravention of the law, shall be admissible, unless the court is of the opinion that the desirability of admitting the evidence is outweighed by the undesirability of admitting the evidence that has been obtained in the manner in which the evidence was obtained. In other words, the question I am asking is, if the evidence is relevance, because what grounds admissibility of evidence is relevance. If the evidence is relevant, irrespective of whether it conformed with that technical ground of accompanying the petition, should the Electoral Petition Tribunal have rejected it? In the case of Ogumbadeju and Owoyemi, the Supreme Court held situations where evidence can be inadmissible. But In Nwabuoku and Onwadi, the Supreme Court held that admissibility of evidence is based generally on relevancy, as a fact in issue is admissible if it is relevant to the matter before the court. And that is the issue we are saying. It is relevant because it was included in the list of documents to be brought before the court. It was pleaded. The only error was because it did not accompany the petition. And of course, if you consider the time limit within which to bring a petition and the need to go and scout for all of these people were subpoenaed. The time may not have been enough for them. And in any case, the Supreme Court has emphasized substantial justice over technical justice, in my view, on the issue of the 10 witnesses whose evidence was rejected because it did not accompany the petition. I think the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal was in error. It was in error. That is one of the issues. I don't know if I should give the floor to others.
But then I'm wondering, because Barrister, you said that, I don't know, the grounds in which the court said, as a matter of fact, that these 10 witnesses, because I do know that the court have a prima facie, and the prima facie contains the weight of the evidence, and the weight of the evidence most times have to also include your witnesses. Now, if you've done due diligence as a petitioner using senior advocates of Nigeria as lawyers in a case, they should know better, because if you're going to put a prima facie before a court, you should have your list of witnesses identified. The court also verifies and cross-checks these witnesses to say the cross is properly guided at all times.
Gbolabo.
Most of the judges talk about a lawyer being organized. If you're coming before a court, you should do thorough diligence.
Gbolabo.
Now, do we pass this buck? This is a weight that we are passing to the court judges. Should it be on the court judges, or is on the petitioner? The burden to prove a case should be on the petitioner, and I think that's what the court say. I'm not holding a brief here,
yes,
but I'm trying to give another reflection to this.
Let me address that. You see, Gbolabo, it is a court of justice, and the court must at all times seek to ensure that justice is done. All right? Now, I have just told you, because of the limitation of time, it may have been impossible for the petitioners to have gotten the written statement. I am saying this. I'm not holding forth for them. I am saying this as a lawyer who is in practice.
But who owns the burden of proof? Here?
No, there's no doubt about it. I think the court established that. Okay. That these people, even though they were subpoenaed, they are the petitioner's witnesses. I agree with that submission. There's no doubt about it. All right? They are the petitioner's witnesses. I am saying that because of the limitation of time, it may not have been possible for the petitioners to have gotten all the written statements on oath of all of those subpoenaed witnesses, but that the court ought to have overlooked that in the interest of substantial justice. Why? Because in the list of documents to be presented before the tribunal, those witness statements were listed. The court said that much. In the pleadings of the petitioners, those witnesses were also mentioned. The court said that much. The only problem the court found was because the provisions of the law is that the witness statements must accompany the petition. Do you get the logic? That's why I quoted the provisions of Section 14, of the Evidence Act. Relevancy grounds admissibility. The fact that those documents were already before the court, they should not have thrown them out. They shouldn't have thrown them out on that flimsy technical excuse. If they were going to give substantial justice in the matter, they should have admitted them. And after all, the two others, 10 were thrown out, 3 of them were admitted, and for the 3, I think about 2 of them were also thrown out, as a result of their failure to meet the firepower of cross-examination of the other parties. All right, but if they ought to have allowed them on the because now I don't know if I may. Do you know the funny thing? The Presidential Election Petition Tribunal applied technicality to throw away those witnesses, but when it came to the issue of issue 4, where they were addressing whether 25% of FCT was a requirement by the Constitution, they resorted to Nnamani's case in Bronick Motors Limited and then Weber Bank, where Nnamani had emphasized the need for substantial justice over technical justice. So to me, it was as if the court was approbating and reprobating at the same time.
All right.
But if time permits, I will go over that issue 4.
All right.
Maybe
we might not have all the time for that, Barrister. I know how passionate you are on this, but let me quickly bring in Professor here, Professor Remi Ayede. And we also have earlier, like I said, we have Professor Isaac Olawale Albert too standing by. We also want him to make 1 or 2 contributions to this before going to the issues of the day. All right, Professor Remi Ayede, do we have you here?
Yes, but I'm not
a learned
guy like
well, you're also learned, politically wise.
With, in fact, I'm even impressed by your own uptake on this issue. Are you also a lawyer?
I'm not a lawyer. I'm a journalist. But I should know little about everything.
I think there are 2 very important issues that I think are substantial that I'm actually looking forward to what the Supreme Court will say on those things. Because even before the petitioners rejected the judgment and they said they were proceeding to the Supreme Court, I've already found issues with your idea that INEC can come to us and tell us that some guidelines are mandatory and sacrosanct, and then come back again later when they have failed to keep up to those guidelines to tell us that they are not, it is not imperative for them to follow those guidelines. I think it creates a big problem for us because those guidelines themselves were designed to shine light on the electoral process, the voting process, and to ensure that the opportunity for shenanigans are removed from the polling unit to the collation center by uploading the results of the polling unit to the IRF portal. But now saying that it's not compulsory creates a huge problem for the transparency of the electoral administration process. And then questions will remain what other measures INEC plans to take to ensure that we don't have very problematic elections. And if the court says that INEC can issue a guideline, even though we know it's a subsidiary legislation, and then come back to not to follow those guidelines in principle and says that there's nothing wrong with that, I think we are in big trouble in terms of the practical demands of election administration. So that's why I want to see what the Supreme Court will also say on that, because it's baffling for INEC officials to announce in social media, in television, in radio, all over the country before the elections that uploading the results sheets to the IRF portal is mandatory. For them to come again and say it is not mandatory. It's really problematic from the viewpoint of transparency of the electoral process and preventive measures against electoral malpractice. And that's a very critical part of the problem. Yeah, then the second one is their interpretation of the status of Abuja. It's really very strange, because if you look at the wording of the 1979 Constitution in that regard, it's very different from the wording of the 1999 Constitution. And when you also look at the principle behind that provision, you also want to hear what the Supreme Court will say. Because if you go back into the history of elections in Nigeria, you'll find that originally parties were ethnic-based, which is one of the reasons why that provision was made. Because in the North, for instance, they don't have to go anywhere outside the North to campaign. Once they win the majority in the North, all they needed to do is to look for a junior partner from anywhere in the South. And so we thought that it was not a good thing. And in fact, one political scientist, McIntosh, described the political parties of the First Republic as no more than ethnic armies battling, for power. So the idea is, the electoral formula was changed so that parties will be forced to go and campaign outside their ethnic base. And so from 1979, we begin to see the emergence gradually of parties who are national in outlook. So there were also additional provisions to ensure that. Now, for the cause to say that Abuja is like any other state for the purpose of this election, it needs further clarification. So what then happened to some of those principles on the basis of which those legislations were made?
All right.
I think that, that's my two major
we need to pay more bills this morning, but we'll have to take this one. When we do come back, we have Professor Albert also share his thought. Then we'll go back to we'll go back to Barrister, and of course round up this conversation around the tribunal judgment. We'll take this break. We'll be back shortly.
32 FM 94.9.
ìròyìn àwọn amóróyè ibùdó kan ara ọ̀tọ̀ lẹ́yìn ní ìlú Ìbàdàn fún báàgì oríṣiríṣi. ẹ̀sìkì máa ṣàwọn ẹ̀ ló ní kí ẹ máa bọ̀ báàgì lóríṣiríṣi. ó ti wà nílẹ̀ bíbá o briefcases lóríṣiríṣi pẹ̀lú travelling bags ladies bag ńkọ́ men executive bags school bags lóríṣiríṣi ó ń bẹ lọ́dọ̀ wọn ní ẹ̀sìkì máa ṣàwọn lówó tí ó gara ni.
Eskema Sham Venture ẹ wọlé ẹ ṣílẹ̀kùn fóríṣiríṣi àwọn báàgì tẹ́ ẹ bá fẹ́ láwọn bíi travelling bags, leather box.
You're listening to 32 FM 94.9.
pápá ń bari ibẹ̀ làwọn bags fáwọn ọmọléèwé tí wọ́n ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ fẹ́ wọlé ẹ má jẹ́ kó tàn yín jẹ o. a wà ní nọ́mbà 51 Nipos Complex tó wà ní àdójúkọ Cocoa House ibẹ̀lẹ̀ Eskema Sham Venture wà tí gbogbo èèyàn mọ̀ sí ẹ̀sìkè gbogbo Bank Road. ẹ pè wá sórí àwọn ẹ̀rọ ìbánisọ̀rọ̀ yìí 08027402198 lẹ́ẹ̀kan sí 08027402198 Eskema Sham Venture ibẹ̀ gangan lójúlówó báàgì wà.
tí wọ́n bá lo ráyéwá nítorí pé o lówó lọ́wọ́ tí wọ́n bá ń tàn ọ́ pọ̀ ráyéwá nítorí dúkìá tó pọ̀ tó ní ọkàn ò tí ì balẹ̀ pọ̀ ráyéwá àlàáfíà lògùn ọrọ̀ ṣáájú ara rẹ o ìlera sílẹ̀ mí gígùn gbogbo àrùn tí ń ṣe ẹ̀dá láyé náà kọ́ láyé fi ń ṣe ni bí dọ̀tí bá pọ̀ lára tí gbogbo ẹ́ńjìnì tásẹ̀dá dá bá ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ tó kọsẹ́ má fòyà tó bá ṣe bí ẹni rárá tára rẹ ò ṣe déédéé pinnu lóòkàn àyà ara rẹ o Ventolin cleanser ní kò sẹ́mu agbanugbàde fọgẹ̀dẹ̀gẹ̀dẹ̀ ara dànù Ventolin jagunlabi pankopi ọ̀rẹ́ ara tọmọdé tàgbà tọkùnrin tóbìnrin ló lè lò ọ̀sọ́kùnrin sóbìnrin dòpépé Ventolin cleanser jẹ̀ṣe maradan bíi kóròsìn Ventolin cleanser kìkìdé egbòogi tí ò lọ́tínú la fi ṣe ó ti wà káàkiri ilé ìtajà oògùn jákèjádò ilẹ̀ Nàìjíríà a sì ń wá alágbàtà fún Ventolin cleanser pé nọ́mbà kò demand 08034051533 08034051533 iléeṣẹ́ ẹ̀mí one naturalist care ló ṣe Ventolin cleanser òun láyé tún lò.
kí lọkùnrin ṣe tó bẹ́ẹ̀ ẹ fà lọ́lọ́pàá lọ́wọ́ kẹ́ má bàa dáràn.
fóònù tí mo ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ rà ní screen rẹ̀ ń ṣiṣẹ́ kíṣẹ́ fún rẹ̀ ló tẹ nọ́mbà ìyàwó wọn. bí a bá ń sọ fún yín ò ní gbọ́. lóòótọ́ ni ilé ìtajà fóònù pọ̀ rẹ́kẹrẹ́kẹ́ ṣùgbọ́n ṣé gbogbo wọn náà ló ta ojúlówó. ilé ìtajà iShop gadget tí mo lè fògbọ́ ẹ̀gbá rí tọ́rọ̀ bá dọ̀rọ̀ kára iPhones Android laptop ìgbàlódé tí mú iṣẹ́ ọpọlọ yá kankan. kódà wọ́n ta accessories lóníranran tó fi mọ́ àwọn èlò ilé mìíràn. gbogbo ọjà tí wọ́n tà pátá ni wọ́n gba san díẹ̀díẹ̀ lórí wọn pẹ̀lú àjọṣọyépọ̀. kódà báyìí bá ti ra ọjà lọ́dọ̀ wọn lẹ́tùn máa jẹ̀bùn. tó bá wá fẹ́ kí páńkì tó gbé dání bá ọkọ̀ ìyàwó sójà lẹ́yìn èyí yára mórílẹ̀ iShop gadget tó wà ní iShop building lẹ́yìn Lagos Ìkòròdú garage fanáwọlé Àbáyọ̀mí road Ìwó road Ìbàdàn tàbí kí o pe ẹ̀rọ ìbánisọ̀rọ̀ wọn 09014579517 iShop gadget gbogbo tẹ́ ẹ fẹ́ lójúlówó lẹ́ ó bá lọ́dọ̀ wọn.
In the words of Robert Greene, mastery is not a function of genius or talent. It's a function of time and intense focus applied to a particular field of knowledge. Do you have what it takes to show mastery in chess, Ludo, Scrabble, Draft, and Ayolopon? Then this is for you. 32FM and Midas Casino brings you Boardmasters 2023. Pick up your form for just 2,000 naira at 32FM 4th floor, Cocoa House, Dubai, or visit the website www.32fm.com.ng/boardmasters to also register. Cash prizes will be won, including television sets, rechargeable fans, mini clippers, blenders, and lots more. This event holds on the 30th of September 2023 by 9 a.m. at Midas Casino, number 44, Awolowo Road, besides Sluggers, Bodija, Ibadan. For more information, call 091-321-00168 or 081-528-31139. Boardmasters 2023 is powered by Midas Casino and proudly brought to you by the Laughter Station, 32FM 94.9. Boardmasters 2023, showcasing mastery.
You're listening to 32 FM 94.9. When the people became silent,
the government became oppressive. It's time to lend your voice to politics.
On 32 FM 94.9.
All right, you're welcome back. You're still on to the podium on 32 FM 94.9. And we're still getting feedback, Prof. Prof, you may need to work on the devices you're using. I don't know if it's on. We are getting feedback from your end, Prof. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, I think you have to put off one device and allow one to work on for now. You can't get feedback from another device and have this one. All right. Is it all right?
Is it the second device? Oh, it's still coming. Do you have a laptop there on and your mobile phone on? If those two are there and on, you cannot have the two on.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us? I think the best thing is for you to go off and off just one device. Have just one device used for this one, Prof. While you go off, if you can go off just and come back on. Hello, Prof.
Hello, Prof. Yes.
Okay, it's better now.
Okay, it's better now.
Okay.
We're still getting feedback. Prof, can you speak to us?
Can you speak to us? Okay. Are you still having problem with my phone?
We are getting feedback from this end. That's why. All right. I would just say, Prof, if you can hear me, you can go off and come back on. Then we'll have you properly. All right, Barrister.
Yes. Thank you very much. Professor Ayede addressed two other very, very germane issues, that I will also touch on very, very briefly. But let me just sum up on what I said earlier concerning the rejection of those 10 witnesses' written statements on oath. A court was asking for, evidence in proof of a claim before it, and people brought that evidence. You rejected it. It doesn't sound too good to me. It is not easy proving substantial non-compliance with the Electoral Act. It is not an easy task. So the court, in my view, ought not to have rejected the evidence. And now, on the one that Prof raised concerning 25% in FCT, I also do not agree with the findings of the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. The court cited the case of Federal Republic of Nigeria against Nganjiwa, which outlined the guidelines to interpreting constitutional provisions. Paragraph C therein states that where the words are clear and unambiguous, a literal interpretation will be applied. Thus, according the words, they are plain and grammatical meaning. Now, you see, what beats me, an irony, the court which allowed technicality on rejecting the 10 witness statements on oath is finding justification in Bronick Motors Limited and Wema Bank, where Nnamani, JSC as it then was, held that in construing the Constitution undue regard must not be paid to mere technical rules. I disagree with the holding of the court that if the framers of the Constitution had wanted to make scoring a quarter of the votes cast in the Federal Capital Territory a specific requirement for the return of a presidential candidate, they would have made the intention plain by using words that clearly separate the scoring of a quarter of the votes in the FCT a distinct requirement. That is the exact words of the justice that read that judgment. And the question I am asking is this: is that not what the framers did in section 134(2) subsection A and B of the Constitution, making a distinct provision that you must call this and a quarter in the Federal Capital Territory? That's about that. Then, of course, on the issue of the regulations and of the Electoral Act. The Electoral Act is very clear. You only need to go to section 47 subsection 2 of the Electoral Act and section 64 subsection 4 of the Electoral Act to see the mandatory nature of those provisions. And not only that, the Court of Appeal, which sat as the court of first instance in this presidential election petition tribunal, is a court that is bound to follow the judicial precedent laid by the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court laid in Access Bank against Ogboja, that a regulation that is made pursuant to a principal act is itself subsidiary legislation, and the court must take judicial notice
Barrister,
of it.
we know that this is a passionate issue for you.
Oh, I am a lawyer.
And this is your constituent.
Anyway, discretion cannot override that as held by that court.
Barrister,
it is mandatory
you
for
have
them.
to calm down. You have to calm down.
It is mandatory for them.
I just hope that you are drafted into the opposition team, because obviously...
No, I cannot even be a part of that team. As far as I am concerned, the three candidates that were presented by the three major political parties are not what Nigeria needs. I am playing my role as a lawyer.
I do understand and, of course, identify with some of the issues that you've actually brought up. But then we mustn't take away the place of technicalities. And this is not the first time we're having instances like this. And whoever is going to court as a petitioner, you must be able to prove. And the weight of burden, it's on the petitioner to do that. And you don't expect the court to be a Father Christmas, willing that when you get to the court, yes, on emotions on social media, what has been said, then the court will now decide based on how people have been saying,
that's why we're
they're not happy.
Them, why then did you throw away their
that's what I'm
evidence?
saying. For instance, if you know you're going to be dealing with issues like this, you should look at every loopholes, every technicalities that could work against your case. And that's why they are SCNs. You've handled this case. The court is not Father Christmas, and the court is not a place where you shed tears or sentiment. The court deals with facts and issues based on law. And if you look at most of the issues, the court backed it up with the point of law. And I think the lawyers should do better. They're going to a higher court. It's not a time to go to bed or wait for what the litigant will pay as a fee. And all the opposition actually challenging this particular judgment itself must do the needful beyond the social media, beyond the media, because sometimes you might have a lot being said in the media. That is not enough for the court. It's a different ballgame where you get into the court system. It doesn't look at your face. It looks at what the law says, the evidence before it, and you cannot buy off whatever that has been in the public space and expect the court to admit that. And we mustn't take away the place of discretion. Even at the point in time we had that late former president, that's Yar'Adua.
Are you saying all of this as a professional lawyer?
Well, I'm not really as a journalist, because it is my duty to also educate. Even if you have instances where you do not buy what has happened in the court system, the public must know that it's not a thing for you to show emotions. It's not about being emotional. It's about the facts. I don't have any interest. I don't have any stake. The stake that I have is because I'm a Nigerian, and of course I have a duty. I'm duty bound as a journalist to say what it is.
Everything we have said.
So obviously, so what I'm
about discretion.
I'm saying, as a matter of fact, that these jurists also have the discretion. But here, most of what they've said is that they are basing whatever facts that are before them through the provisions of the law. And now whoever that is handling a case before the court must be able to prove beyond reasonable doubts. That's what I'm saying. And now going to a higher court, all of these emotions will not work even when they get to Supreme Court. You must have your facts intact. You must be able to present your case to the court in such a way. Some people have been saying to the opposition members to sack their lawyers and bring in the new, even if they bring in the new ones, if you don't do your homework, when you get to a higher court, they also take you back to some of those loopholes and those technicalities. So they must up their game. It's not about this thing should have been this way. They should be able to prove to the courts that there were alterations, there were instances of manipulation, because the court said, as a matter of fact, most of you who said most of those cases were toppled, things were not done in the right direction, you had agents. The court also said you had agents. Who were there? What happened to them? And now those are the issues that it's not just about condemning the process, but also taking note. From instances of criticism, you also see truth. And I think that the lawyers should go back and look at what the court has said, do due diligence, and of course get back on their feet. And this is actually not the end of it. There must be end to litigation, barrister, like you say in your legal parlance. So there must be end to this, and we must move forward as a nation, whichever way it goes. But we're hoping that Nigeria gets better. The major thing now, the focus is for Nigeria to get better. And that's our prayer, that whoever leaders that we're having should have the spirit of sportsmanship, should have the spirit of leading us out of what appears to be a dire straits situation in Nigeria. So we'll have a better life in the country. And of course, that said, we have our guest back. You're hoping that we get him clearly right about now. Professor, can we hear you?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Better now. Yes, I can hear you better. All right. We have our guest here. And of course, it's been a heated one, especially looking at how Barrister has been so passionate this morning. And we're hoping that all of these things will be well addressed. All right, quickly, let me introduce you to our guest. We have Professor Isaac Albert. He's a Nigerian professor of African History, Peace and Conflict Studies, and the pioneer director of the Institute for Peace and Strategic Studies, IPSS, University of Ibadan, Nigeria. He's also a member of Confab 2014. It's great to have you join us here, sir.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and sorry that technology failed me.
It happens.
I've listened very carefully to all the submissions. Let me commend you, Gbolabo, because some of your positions are highly technical and convincing. And I'm also persuaded by the argument of our learned professor in the House. But to me, I think the summary of it all is that we are dealing with two issues. The first one is ethical. And when we are dealing with the ethical dimension of the issue at hand, I think we have to blame INEC for promising what it could not promise, promising what it could not deliver. But that is different from the second leg of the argument, which is legalistic. I mean, when we are dealing with the laws of the land, electoral laws, our constitution, I think we have to submit ourselves to both technicalities and substantive justice that our barrister called attention to. Because some questions were placed before the judiciary. And I think the judgment, to me, in my own consideration, conferred more respectability on the Nigerian judiciary. Because before the judgment, we were all in doubt of what will happen on the day of that judgment. And if that judgment, had been delivered without the live coverage, many of us might have thought that probably there were some manipulations. But we listened to the judgment. We are not lawyers, but we have our brains in the right proportion of our skull. We could actually follow the issues up, logically. A number of questions were asked. did Obi win this election? The judgment says very clearly that Obi could not provide statistical data that will show that he won the election. And I don't think electoral victories are awarded whimsically. You must convince the judiciary, the court of law, that you have approached with the number of votes that you have won and that made you to be higher than that of, yours to be higher than that of the other party. And then the second question is Abuja sacrosanct? From the provisions of the law that we read before the judgment and from the judgment that we listened to, Abuja can never be bigger than the rest of Nigeria. So in other words, we are saying that if we have 36 states or 37 states, whatever you call it, in Nigeria, and you win 36, you fail to win Abuja, that means you will lose the election. I don't think that is reasonable by any standard, and I don't think we can get any part of the world where you begin to apply that type of provision. Then the third issue has to do with the case that Tinubu had in America. It was established clearly that that type of situation could not be brought into our system because there was no conviction per se. We listened to the judgment, and then even if he was convicted in America, the question is, can you actually bring that judgment to Nigeria? The fourth one has to do with the issue of Shetima. Is it double nomination? So the issues were picked one by one. Now, let's go back to the issue of the 10 witnesses that were, the 10 witnesses that were thrown out. I'm strongly persuaded by the argument of the barrister in the House that yes, that could be revisited. But I asked myself when he was making the presentation, even if the 10 of them were considered and listened to, could their submissions have actually nullified the other issues, Abuja, Tinubu in America, Shetima, and the rest of them, and then the victory of Obi? To me, I think this judgment, in my own consideration, conferred more respectability on our judiciary, in the sense that before that judgment, there were several innuendos, there were several, our legal system was demonized to the extent that some of us were thinking that nothing good will come out of it all. But when I listen to the judgment, I think that our laws can still guide us. If we have any problems with our laws, let's go back and reform the legal system. Let's go and change our laws. Then for INEC, if INEC has not done well, let us identify what INEC has not done well and then try to correct them before we get to the next election cycle.
All right, that's it. Thank you so much, Professor, for shedding more light into this. And of course, that has touched on so many other areas. But quickly, let's start off with our conversation and issues around your expert and, of course, your focus. In 2014, Confab approved community and state policing to address the escalating security crisis in the country. Up till date, it had not seen the light of the day. How does that make you feel as a member of that national conference?
Well, I feel very bad. I feel betrayed as a Nigerian. I was actually with the Inspector General, the past Inspectors General of the Nigerian Police. I was with them about 3-4 weeks ago. They had a retreat in Ibadan, about 12-13 of them at IIT, and I was invited as a consultant to address them on a number of issues. And I feel that what this country is doing, and most of the time, is to keep hiding behind one leprous finger. We have serious security problems. These security problems occur at the community level. But we want to pretend to be managing community problems in Abuja. And this is the problem we are facing. At the conference, we came up with several reports on the need for community policing, state policing. And as I told the IGs, the retired IGs, community policing is not what we're doing in Nigeria, because many of the people managing community policing in Nigeria do not even know what communities are scientifically. In America and other jurisdictions, community policing has to do with the people managing their own security. If there is a burglary in any community, the community members should be able to identify who is responsible. If you are entering into the community members know who is responsible. But because of the crave, because of our yearnings to control all financial resources relating to security management, we have decided to be managing community policing from Abuja. And I think this is a great disservice. And what I see us also doing is, through the back door, we are actually implementing what we disown in our constitution. Go around the country, you see different forms of community policing. Civilian JTF in the northeast, Yandaba, you find all kinds of community structures for managing problems. Amateku, so what we reject in our constitutions, we go behind the doors to actually put in place. So we are not honest with ourselves, and I think it is this political dishonesty that is making Nigeria's past to be better than our present. Things are getting bad and bad. Things are getting worse and worse for us, and this is because we are not politically honest with ourselves.
Okay, on that note, Barrister, I guess you wanted to say something.
Thank you very much. Prof, let me commend you, even though you say you are not a lawyer, but the way you itemized the issues and addressed them, I don't think a lawyer could have done it any better. So I should commend you, on the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal issue. Okay, now the question I want to ask is this. I see your passion for, decentralizing the police. But there is an issue I would want you to address. What we have found in Nigeria is a case where the institutions of state, rather than holding allegiance to the Constitution and the country as a whole, they owe allegiance to the man who is in office, either the president or the governor. Now, do you think, with the situation of things as they are, institutions holding allegiance to individuals rather than to states, would it augur well for the kind of dream that you have, for policing in Nigeria?
Thank you very much, sir. My problem with that argument, and which is the argument that Nigeria has been advancing for quite a long time, is to assume that the most honest Nigerians you can ever find are at the federal level, and that those at the grassroots level are very dishonest, or that the most patriotic Nigerians you can ever have are those that have, I don't want to say impose themselves on us, those who are leading us from Abuja. But what I have discovered from my own scientific research is that those governing us in Abuja are as problematic as the leaders that we are afraid of in our local communities. I agree with you that if you give our present crop of governors more power to police their states, they will become more draconian, they will become more problematic. But when you get to the federal level, you see the same problem. I had an issue here many years ago, and I shared this with the IGs. There was a problem in Ibadan, a very small problem in a local community. And we were invited to intervene. Before we got to the spot of the problem, we were told that it had been moved to Abuja. I mean, how can we say that the management of a small problem in Elenusoso village is better managed by Abuja? We have not contacted the local chiefs. We have not contacted Olubadan. We have not contacted the state government. Then it is Abuja that the problem will be managed. Now, let me say from my own research, because I did a concept note for African Union on this. My observation is that all over Africa, political leaders prefer to manage local problems at the national level. A problem occurs at the community level, and they are taken to the state capital to manage. And I think this is why this continent is a slaughter slab. That is why people are killing themselves at different parts of Africa at the community level. And when these people are killing themselves, what we have discovered is that our political leaders at the central level, one, do not understand the issues. Two, do not understand the stakeholders. Three, do not understand local approaches for managing such problems. And that is why next month, a meeting is to be called in Ouagadougou, where African leaders will be collating ideas on how to return to management of problems at community level. But they are still afraid of calling it community policing. Because now at the central level, citizens are rejecting the state because the state is not part of them. The state has nothing to do with them. And this is what you are witnessing in Niger. This is what you are witnessing in Burkina Faso. This is what you are witnessing in Mali. In Mali, people are tired of the central government because, it's like they go to the central level to bring more problems for your communities. I agree with you, but I think we really need to restructure our national security architecture in a way that will give more power to the people, to local people to manage their problems.
All right, okay. All right, Prof. Thank you for dropping that.
As African solutions to African problems.
Okay.
African solutions to African problems should not be some colorless characters in Abuja dictating how every problem should be solved.
All right, Professor Ayede, are you still with us? Professor Ayede?
Yes.
All right, Prof. I'm sure that you've been listening. And of course, this is also your area of interest, talking about political scientists and how much more true federalism has been an issue, especially for many political scientists in Nigeria. Now, where do you come in here?
Well, I would like to ask Professor Albert, when you look at the situation in Nigeria, you talked about community policing, you talked about state police. Does that cover the universe of possibilities in terms of looking at the problem that we have? So it's either community policing or state police. There are no other additional options.
Well, if we choose to be a federal state, then we must actually learn the lessons of true federalism. Federalism is saying that, our own type of federalism is saying that you have 3 levels of power, political power. You have the federal, you have the state, you have the local. Now, Yoruba people will say, so if you are saying that the local people, if you are saying there is something called local government, I think we should allow local people to manage their problems, and any problem they are not able to manage at local level can be moved to the state level. Any problem you cannot manage at state level can be moved to the federal level. In the US, the jurisdictions, the powers of the federal police are different from that of the state police. And then at the local level, even small communities, universities have their own policing systems. So let them manage their problems. And as we said at the 2014 conference, if local people are allowed to manage their problems at the local level, Abuja, there will be less tension at the national level. Look at us now. We have this killer elders crisis all over the place. When President Buhari was in government, the thing has gone down. And one lesson you draw from it is that those people causing problems at the local level are doing it because they have a commander at the central level, at the federal level. So why is it that the situation has really been doused? You have less people now being killed in communities. Those people doing the killing, they have left. And that tells you that when they were doing it because they have a principal in Abuja. So the point I'm making is that I don't want us to canonize Abuja and then demonize our communities. We know how to manage our problems at local levels. But the present national security architecture of Nigeria does not actually allow us to manage our problems at local level. And this is why people fight to the point of getting the attention of the federal government.
All right, Barrister, before we leave this issue, you wanted to add one or two things.
Yes, Prof. There is another vexed issue, that I would really love you to address. And that's the issue relating to the revenue formula. Before Buhari left office, Buhari, signed into law state power to generate electricity, for instance, the issue of an independent judiciary, the issue of an independent legislature, and now you are also canvassing, for state police. What happens to the nation's revenue sharing formula? How do we intend to fund, the police if the formula remains as it is?
Thank you, sir. Well, you see, if we go the full route of true federalism, it will not just be a matter of communities managing their security problems. They should also be able to manage their revenue derivation. How they should be able to generate their own resources and manage these resources in a way that will promote community development. When I see people writing on community development, they isolate the fact that these communities are not given the control of their economic, they are not given control over their local resources. I saw a video recently on the illegal mining of gold in Zamfara State. And I think that video is scandalous. People digging everywhere, thousands of people digging. And we were told before Buhari left that some of these gold diggers submit some to Zamfara State government. And we saw how the federal government actually gave billions to Zamfara for the gold that they got from Zamfara State. But on the other side, when we were researching into illegal refineries in the Niger Delta, we saw several boys and girls being killed by the Nigerian military, because they were running what they call illegal refineries. So if you steal oil in the Niger Delta, your backyard, and you steal gold in Zamfara, what is the difference between the two of you? Why should the Niger Delta person be killed? Why should the Zamfara person be protected?
And
I was on a mission. I was on a mission in Dubai. And one of the people we encountered there said that we sell gold in Dubai, but Nigeria produces the gold. Until I saw the Zamfara illegal mines, I did not believe this man. He said most of the golds we sell in Dubai come from Nigeria. Now the question is, who are these people taking our gold?
All right. All right, Prof. Dubai. Okay, we have to go on this break very shortly. We'll be back.
FM 94.9.
ṣé ìrìn àjò afẹ́ lẹ fẹ́ rìn ni àbí tọrọ ajé lọ síbi yòówù káàkiri àgbáyé pẹ̀lú You Fit Fly ìrọ̀rùn ló bá dé nípa ṣíṣe ètò ilé ìtura tó fini lọ́kàn balẹ̀ àti bíbáni ra tíkẹ́ẹ̀tì ọkọ̀ òfurufú lọ síbikíbi tẹ́ bá ń lọ lágbàáyé You Fit Fly ló ṣe é gbọ́kànlé àti ní ìrírí ọdúnmọ́dún nípa bíbáni ṣètò tíkẹ́ẹ̀tì ìrìnnà àti ilé ìtura káàkiri gbogbo àgbáyé tí àwọn arìnrìn-àjò sì ń ṣe sàdánkátà sí wa tí ẹ̀yin nìkan ni ìdílé yín tàbí ọ̀pọ̀ èèyàn You Fit Fly ní ọ̀nà àbáyọ tí ìrìn àjò yín yóò fi rọ̀ yín lọ́rùn ẹ pè wá sórí 0901 111 1190 0901 111 1190. ẹ sì lè kàn sí wa lórí www.youfitfly.com tàbí lọ́fíìsì wa tó wà ní block 8 plot 15 lópòpónà 7up Olúyọ̀lé main estate Ring Road Ìbàdàn Ọ̀yọ́ state. You Fit Fly ra tíkẹ́ẹ̀tì ìrìnnà gba ilé ìtura káàkiri gbogbo àgbáyé pẹ̀lú ìrọ̀rùn.
ṣẹ̀mí bí olóògùn ọ̀rẹ́.
ìjà ò dọ́là lètò tó yanjú aáwọ̀.
láàrin mùtúmùwà.
tóbi lọ́ba ògúnṣínà wọ̀kìlú mọ̀ látọ́kùn ètò.
láago 11 àárọ̀ lọ́jọ́ ẹtì àti àbámẹ́ta.
For the top 10 banging songs across Nigeria.
Top 10 super songs across Africa.
The Top 10 Countdown is your show.
Saturdays 12 to 1 p.m. with Denike and King Kenny. In the words of Robert Greene, mastery is not a function of genius or talent. It's a function of time and intense focus applied to a particular field of knowledge. Do you have what it takes to show mastery in chess, Ludo, Scrabble, Draft, and Ayolopon? Then this is for you. 32 FM and Midas Casino brings you Boardmasters 2023. Pick up your form for just 2,000 naira at 32 FM 4th floor, Cocoa House, Dubai, or visit the website www.32fm.com.ng/boardmasters to also register. Cash prizes will be won, including television sets, rechargeable fans, mini clippers, blenders, and lots more. This event holds on the 30th of September 2023 by 9 a.m. at Midas Casino, number 44, Awolowo Road, beside Sluggers, Bodija, Ibadan. For more information, call 091-321-00168 or 081-528-31139. Boardmasters 2023 is powered by Midas Casino and proudly brought to you by the Laughter Station, 32 FM 94.9. Boardmasters 2023, showcasing mastery.
You're listening to 32 FM 94.9.
Just because you do not take an interest in politics doesn't mean politics won't take an interest in you.
The funds spent were properly spent because we got them from intervention funds.
Only you waka come. There is God.
I don't know which party my wife belongs to, but she belongs to my kitchen and my living room and the other room.
Stay in tune with politics on 32 FM 94.9.
All right, you're welcome back. You're still on to the podium on 32 FM 94.9. And of course, you can quickly also join us on our socials, 32 FM 949 Ibadan, and also on YouTube in case you want to drop one or two comments or questions if you have questions for our guest this morning. And we'll see our Professor Isaac Albert, a Nigerian professor of African history, peace and conflict studies from the University of Ibadan. All right, Prof, I want us to quickly also look at other issues, engage you very quickly. A new report by UNICEF indicates that Nigeria lost 100 billion naira to conflicts in the northeast between 2008 and 2021. How can Nigeria survive this debacle coupled with public sector corruption?
Well, you see, when you have our type of problems, you are bound to face serious economic crisis. There is what is called war economy. When you are fighting, when you are in a war situation, most especially our type of asymmetrical warfare that we are fighting here in Nigeria, you have war, you have conflict entrepreneurs that benefit from the conflict. For example, recently we discovered that the dry fish, the Borno dry fish that are no longer available in southern Nigeria are now freely available in Central African Republic. So this is because the traders could no longer bring the fish southwards. So they take them through Niger, Chad, to North Central African Republic. Now, on the other side, you discover that less farmers, farms have been taken over by fighters. People can no longer go to their farms, and then you have kidnappers in the northwest and even northeast, that focus largely on collection of ransoms. That is to say, you work very hard and then you give the money to career criminals. Now, so people are no longer working. The little resources you have are now in the hands of troublemakers, and the more money in the hands of these troublemakers, the more weapons they will acquire, and the more difficult the society will become. In fact, I attended a meeting recently where it was, calculated. I mean, the person making that presentation was making a projection that it will be difficult to recover northern Nigeria in 25 years, to return the northern parts of Nigeria to what it was. It will take 25 years. But if you extrapolate, if you bring the calculation down to the southern parts of the country, we are also suffering. The resources that are meant for funding education are given to soldiers who are fighting in different parts of northern Nigeria, because it is expensive to fight any war. And also, when you are fighting wars, it is difficult for you to say you want to audit the amount of money that is going into the system. So it allows career criminals to have a field day.
All right, because you said that, Prof, let me just do this as a follow-up, then bring in also our panelists. Between 2014 and 2015, you were drafted into a presidential committee to review the national defense policy. What were the outcomes, looking at some of the things that you just said now?
Now, I will give you 2 points on that. For producing a national defense policy, you look at your internal security environment, and you look at your external security environment. Now, to be able to match the two, you need to leave Nigeria, you need to go abroad to actually study a number of countries to look at the threats. It was budgeted for in our committee, and I don't want to say the money was stolen. We produced that document without leaving Abuja. This is the truth. Anybody hearing about it for the first time will know that what we call Nigeria's defense policy today is an empty document, likely an academic piece of document, because we sat down in Abuja, we reflected on the problems happening, and then we wrote a report. And that is why some of us who sat in that committee will tell you that as of today, Nigeria does not have any serious national defense policy. Now, we in assessing our national security problems, we asked several questions, and we discovered that soldiers were running away from the battlefront because, one, they were not provided with the right kind of arms, and then some parents prevented their arming children. You have several officers who are in the service and who are officers. Some of them sent to the war front refused to go because their parents phoned to say, I did not ask my son to join the army to go and fight. So we face all kinds of problems when we were actually managing that problem. But another interesting one that I will call your attention to is that we realized that Nigeria could manufacture its own arms from within. In Kaduna, we saw Ezugu, a line, an armored personnel carrier that was manufactured by General Ezugu. He read history, but he succeeded in getting people together from the southeastern part of Nigeria. And that's, Ezugu today is working very hard in the north, in the northwest and northeast. The question is, why are we not investing in further developing Ezugu? And then we have Proforce, a Nigerian company that is also manufacturing armored personnel carrier. And I was told recently that, in fact, a European country came to buy some of these weapons, vehicles from Nigeria. Yes. Then we went to Innocent Motor in Nnewi, and we discovered that Innocent could manufacture some of the military vehicles that we need in Nigeria. Well, let's say we are happy that at least the military has started buying some, some vehicles from innocent motors. And then we discovered from the southeastern parts of Nigeria that these people have capacity for manufacturing different types of arms. But I don't think we're buying those arms, and I don't think we're encouraging those people to manufacture our arms because they're Igbo made. So the Nigeria problem is self-imposed. Nigeria can manage our problems creatively if we have responsible leadership. The problem of Nigeria is lack of leadership.
All right, that said, Barrister, before you come on board, let me just set this tone. 8.3 million Nigerians in these crisis-torn areas, because you're talking about the Northeast now, Yobe, Borno, and of course Adamawa, according to the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, are in need of urgent intervention. Is this an indication that Buhari's touted social safety net is lopsided for not capturing these numbers, for instance, that this government is inheriting? Did you hear me, Prof?
Oh, is that question to me?
Yes, Prof. 8.3 million Nigerians in these areas that you mentioned, for instance, according to the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, are in dire need of intervention. Now, we talk about a social safety net and how much more some of the security apparatus or architecture of the country is not in tandem with some of the policies that have been created in the past, because I know that was during the Jonathan time. You're talking about the review of the defense policy itself. And now, if you still have these numbers not captured by the social safety net, what does it tell us about that social safety net that was touted during the Buhari's administration itself? Is this all in a charade, just to impress that you're working?
I doubt if any safety net was sincerely created. I mean, that Ministry of Humanitarian, whatever it is called, was created by Buhari regime. But that place is a citadel of corruption. At least we saw this when we were when we had COVID. We saw school children being fed when they couldn't go outside their homes. I mean, every week we're told billions was being spent feeding children who were with their parents. Now, if these people fail to use the resources that were provided during COVID, who is that person saying now that if we give them more resources, that these resources will get to the needy? People. So,
are you doubting Betta Edo now, because he's the new minister here? Are you doubting the new administration?
No, I am not doubting the new administration. You know, the new administration came in by saying we inherited humongous debt problems and so on. But technically speaking, as a scholar, I would ask the question, who actually created this problem? Is the same APC, the same government that is still ruling us? And where were all these people making noise, now asking questions now? I mean, if you are saying you inherited, from who? You did not inherit this from APC, from PDP. You did not inherit it from LP. Where were all of you when these problems were taking place? I mean, those of us complaining that Nigeria was being mismanaged from 2015 to 2023, we were labeled as whalers. We were labeled as whalers, whalers, and we are the hailers now. So the problem of Nigeria is self-made. You see, some of us have gone around we have gone around the world. In Europe, while working for the military, I flew at low altitude. These people don't have anything. God has blessed us with everything: human resources, material resources, natural resources. But I don't know. I don't want to blame God. I don't want to say God did not give us leadership. It's like people are jacked, leadership from God, and they have decided to turn Nigeria to what it is. And that is why when I attend some meetings in Abuja, I ask those calling the meetings, are you truly interested in solving the problem for which all of us have today gathered? Sometimes they say, look, I'm insulting them. Because the day our leaders decide that Nigeria will be better, I'm telling you, Nigeria will change. Nigeria will change. There is nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong with our country. All over the country, there is no country you go to today. If you're an expert in any field, you will not find Nigerians playing leadership role in those sectors all over the world. You find Nigerians there. I was recently invited to to the security summit in Kigali, the Rwandese National Security Summit. I was invited as a speaker, and one of the chief guests at that meeting, Dr. Gbolabo, did his PhD under me in University of Ibadan. And when he mounted the podium and said, look, this man supervised me. And several people came out from that country to say, look, I'm a Nigerian. But the question was asked, you have this number of technical, highly skilled people abroad. How do you bring them back home? And then people started sharing with us the lessons of Kagame in Rwanda. He has succeeded in bringing many Rwandese diasporas back home. Clement business environment, if you're a professional, you get rewarded for your efforts. But in this country, the more you read, the more hardworking you are, the poorer you get. So how do you build a country like that?
All right, let me go to Barrister. Barrister, please go.
Yes, Prof, I have one more question for you. You are an expert in peace and conflict studies. There is a new revolutionary wave that is sweeping through Africa, particularly West Africa, with these anti-France sentiments. We've had a coup in Mali, we've had a coup in Burkina Faso, we've had in Guinea, we've had in Niger, and of course recently the one in Gabon. Now, the West African Economic Bloc, ECOWAS, took some decisions recently about going to war. Now, I am looking at the influence of terrorists within the Sahel. I am looking at the French involvement in the conflict. I am looking at America in the conflict. And I am looking at Russia and the much touted Wagner Group. I want to hear from you, an expert in peace and conflict studies, whether or not the decision that was taken at ECOWAS level actually took deep consideration of all of these factors.
All right, Prof, permit me before you answer that, let me just reel out the phone numbers because our time is also fast spent so that we can also get our audience contribute while you're also answering that. The numbers are 070-55,949 or 080-97949. And for an international audience, you can call this number +234 90 62 949. All right, Prof.
Well, as you rightly said, sir, ECOWAS was not properly advised. And even if ECOWAS was not technically advised, one would have expected ECOWAS to learn the lessons of the past. We have Guinea, we have Mali, we have Burkina Faso. Now, ECOWAS intervened in these three countries. Intervene first and foremost by threatening sanctions. And all of them said, to hell with you, ECOWAS. And their people came out to say, we own our country. We do not want ECOWAS to interfere in our internal problems. Now, one would have expected ECOWAS to have handled Guinea differently. Now, beyond what people are saying there, I have two reasons why handled Niger differently. The first reason is that Niger is very, very strategic to the peace of West Africa. A lot of illicit arms flow into the Sahel region. The Sahel region is the corridor.
Right. Sorry, Prof, to butt in. We have a caller here. Hello, good morning.
Okay.
Good morning, please. What's the name and where you're calling us from?
Biodun is my name, calling from Abo.
All right, please go ahead, Biodun.
I say good morning to the Prof. He has done a wonderful analysis. God bless him with more wisdom, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Let me, I think you said it's from University of Ibadan, right?
Yes.
Now, Prof, you will understand what I want to say better. At times when we talk about bad leadership, yes, you are right. But there's something that established bad leadership in Nigeria, and that is poor system and structure. In that UI, the Keke Marua can never have a passenger in front. Am I right, Prof? You can never drive in one way in UI.
Yes.
The cabs in UI can never carry two passengers in front. But immediately you leave the gate of UI, you jump into another system of the state where everything goes. So what we need to establish in this country, from my own view, is a working system and structure. How can we have a country that if you want to contest as a president, your corruption file does not matter. Your health status has nothing to do. Your educational standard is of no essence to the country by system, by law and constitution. So what we need to do is to have a referendum in this country. Don't expect a messiah anywhere to become the president and fix the country. I told some people, I'm a Christian. If you bring Jesus Christ as the president of this country, bring our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as the vice president, I am telling you the system will not allow them to work. Because if you want to fight corruption, bring Dasuki to court, the court will grant him bail. But in other countries, corruption is a non-billable offense. So what we have to establish in this country is to put a system in place. Like we have the equation of speed. You can't get the speed when you don't cover a distance at a particular time. It's a constant. Please, that is the message I want Prof to be giving out to some of those colleagues whenever they go to meeting. Don't expect a president to fix the country. It can never happen. That's the truth, sir.
All right, thank you so much for your submission. And of course, the numbers are still 08097,949. You can also call +234 9062,949. And of course, the other numbers are 07055,949. All right, Professor Ayede, we also have you on board. Prof, you've been a little bit silent. Do we also have one or two things you want to say here?
Well, I was going to join issues with Prof because when he was talking about some of those things he has participated in, he was talking about them not being properly done. Don't you think that it is self-indictment for you to say that you were part of the development of the defense policy and then at the same time you are saying that it's not properly done?
Well, what do you do? What do you do when you are in a mission and those managing the mission refused to provide wherewithal for doing the work? Professor Ayede, you are a staff of the University of Ibadan. You know, do you have the resources for doing your work and all the significant contributions you have made to knowledge? To what extent has it impacted Nigeria? You are out there advising a foreign government. Will your own government listen to you? So we were invited to be members of this committee, and the committee was managed by Ministry of Defense. And in fact, our accommodation, the money meant for our accommodation was not given to us until one of us was invited to chair the committee that probed Colonel Dasuki, the National Security Advisor. It was then they called back to us to say, look, your accommodation, this thing we have not paid. So the problem, the point I was trying to make is that we ought to have done A, B, C, but we were prevented from doing A, B. We stopped at A. So what do you do? You know, so there is, we are powerless in actually responding to these problems. We started by discussing elections. There are provisions for managing elections in this country. There were things that INEC said that INEC failed to do. But who among us can go and arrest INEC? So I think the person that called now was actually referring to the Nigerian problem as being systemic. If the system is wrong, there is little you can do. In security analysis, we have what is called multi-track diplomacy. We have 9 important stakeholders that can put a country together. Track 1 is the government. Track 5 is the academia. as that man rightly said, we do it well in the University of Ibadan. But the question he was asking is that once you leave the campus of the University of Ibadan, why is everything wrong? Everything is wrong because the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ibadan is not the person managing Ibadan. And I think this is the problem. So we are powerless. We all came there. We work. We give it's like the national conference. We gave our best to this country. Now the question is, shouldn't we be blaming ourselves for our inability to make the recommendations of the national conference impact positively on Nigeria? We are powerless. We have done our own bit. So if there is any stone throwing, it should not be towards us. We have done our best. We've given Nigeria our best. And if Nigeria refused to use our recommendations, if our recommendations were trashed, then I don't think Professor Alba should be blamed.
Prof, just before you go,
we are not even allowing him go yet. Okay, let's just take this on. Hello, good morning.
Okay. Good morning. Hello, good morning to you. Okay.
Yes, Liz. Your name and where you calling us from?
This is Ayola Rasat from Monia.
All right, please go ahead.
My advice is that I would like the like of professors, both and lawyer Yomi, and they are like, is it possible for them to see the president one-on-one or go to the Senate House on this very kind of their kind of view about the reformation of the Constitution of Nigeria?
All right, that's a tall. All right, thank you so much. That's a tall wish.
I know that Gbolabo will have easier
I'm
access.
Just how is that going to be? All right, I'm just an ordinary Nigerian.
Prof, sir.
Okay.
I still want you, sir. I still want you, sir, to advise ECOWAS on the best way forward on the Niger crisis. I was hoping you will conclude on that, sir.
You see, ECOWAS did not act well on Niger. One, because we have a very robust security architecture for West Africa. And in fact, it's said to be the best in Africa, the ECOWAS national defense or whatever. And ECOWAS should have known that for making us to have peace in West Africa, Niger was our buffer zone because surplus arms come into the Sahel region through Chad and through different parts of the Sahel. The Sahel is the corridor from Mauritania to Djibouti in Eritrea. So in that corridor is called axis of evil. It is a global nomenclature. It's an axis of evil, because you have all kinds of terrorist organizations.
All right. Sorry, Prof, to butt in. Hello, good morning. All right. That's actually misplacement here.
Prof.
Okay, please go ahead, Prof.
So now everybody was using Niger to balance the security of West Africa. And that was why when Buhari was supporting Niger, people said he was providing those support because it's from Niger. He did, most of the things he did for Niger was to strengthen the security of Nigeria, including those jeeps that he bought for the military in Niger, because they are basically the ones fighting people from bringing arms into the country. They are the ones stopping foreign fighters from coming in. Now, for Nigeria and ECOWAS to have threatened the same security that is actually doing the work, to me, it doesn't make sense.
All right, Prof. Okay, I would want to butt in a little bit, because we have a number of issues that we would have touched and unable to touch it, especially on your area of expertise. Now, gun running is becoming a booming business in Nigeria. What are the options available for the country in tackling the proliferation of small arms and light weapons? And that's one. The second one is Major General Abba Diko is a pioneer national coordinator of the National Center for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons. But as a security scholar, do you think this center has lived up to expectations since its establishment on May 3rd, 2021?
Well, let me observe that any country that is extremely poor and divided by religion and ethnicity as we are cannot but have influx of inflow of surplus arms and light weapons. So we are behaving like countries that have our kinds of problems. And inflow of arms in this context is to be seen as a meal ticket. I mean, in the past, we described AK-47 as ATM card. You know, those with ATM, you know, with AK-47, use it to feed themselves. And therefore, we have, you know, avalanche of arms across the country. But what I do not see Nigerians discussing each time we're talking about surplus arms is that we do not factor into our analysis the capacity of Nigerians to manufacture any kinds of arms. I'm not referring to the Inewis of this world. I'm not referring to the southeast of this world. If you go to different parts of the north, you see people manufacturing different types of local arms. Now, these local arms that people manufacture are more devilish than the Western ones, because the safety nets, you know, the safety nets in the one brought from outside are not actually factored into the production of the local ones. Some of the local weapons contain things that are not really good for the society. So we have locally manufactured arms, and then we have the surplus arms from the international market. Now, the problem is that when you move very close to DICO and its people, most of the time they talk about the ones coming from outside. And then when you look at them also, you sit with them to consider the ones coming from outside that they are talking about. You know that they do not even know how these arms come in.
And so they can't mop it up. Is that what it means? It can't be mopped up.
We all buy Tokumbo cars. Every Tokumbo car that is coming into Nigeria, I'm sorry to say this openly, is loaded, is padded with surplus arms. Because as you are taking them across the border from Benin to Nigeria, to make the car cheaper and to make the crossers make sufficient gains, you need to put different types of arms inside. So when you bring the car into Nigeria, you remove the arms, you sell them, and then a crosser will get as little as 20,000 naira. And then from the arms brought in, it makes more money. So our borders are porous. Those pretending to be managing our security problems are not too serious. And then in some cases, you cannot blame them, because everybody in Nigeria today is selling whatever you can sell.
Okay, we have a caller here. Sorry, Prof. Hello, good morning.
All right, good morning. Beyond calling back.
Okay.
I just want to clear some things. I'm not blaming the VC of UI for the lack of system in the state. What I'm just trying to do is that we can see system working within UI. It doesn't matter who becomes the VC. What has been structured must be followed through. But my point is, in Nigeria, we don't have the system. How can the law of the land allow governors to plant on their ground, but underneath the ground, the governor does not have the power to tap into the resources? Does that make sense?
It's a okay.
This our law and constitution. This one that we are practicing must be thrown into hellfire.
All right, we must say thank you. These are constitutional issues, and of course, that could be another topic for another day. All right, Prof. Before we go, I just want you to drop this: the palliative measure of the government it's been heavily criticized. What is the fate of the internally displaced persons as we go this morning?
I will ask you to ask Professor Ayede. Is a policy.
Okay.
Well, Prof, are you the one keeping our palliatives?
No, on policy. I mean, so talk to us.
All right, but before we let you go, what are your thoughts about these economic policies? Has he helped out in any way?
Professor Ayede?
We are talking to you, Professor Albert, so that we'll let you go.
No. I am a panelist, Prof. I'm supposed to ask questions.
Our public policies are disjointed. You see, I teach public policy at Defense College. And, you know, in a policy, when you're setting a new policy, you start with agenda setting. You must first know what the people want. You must first know what the people want. And then they will tell you.
All right, our time is actually fast spent, and of course we have to leave the studios right about now. We must say a big thank you to Professor Olawale Albert for doing this with us this morning, and also Professor Remi Ayede also for joining us all the way from Kenya. To our two profs to say a big thank you, and also to Barrister Yomi Ogunlola, thank you for the fire this morning. And to all our listeners and all our audience to say a big thank you. My name is Gbolabo Famous. Join us again next week for another interesting edition. Bye for now.
We can bet that you've never listened to radio like this before.
You can bet that you've never listened to radio like this before. It's the